You discussed about the Bombay Juhu development, am I right? Or no?
We are in 43 Krishna Balram temple.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful thing Prabhupada has done when Mr. S said that, I want front part of the property back. And deed is not complete. Gurudas was not completed the deed also. Actually didn't collect the deed from it is with the registrar. Now when Prabhupada hears that this man, Mr. S, wants his plan now at the front section to have a gas station because now is that looks like it's coming up. Demand is coming up. In my gas station shops, just like in India they do. Their front side they do business and back side they can give temple the money they can get like that. So Prabhupada become spiritual intelligence. What he did, he immediately said, go build that the boundaries quickly, cover, raise full, and ask the mistress to come and visit. Right? Am I right? So here, mistress, why? Okay, here. On further inquiry, Prabhupada learned that Gurudas had not yet received the actual deed. Prabhupada was greatly disturbed, yet he proceeded calmly and intently. Gurudas, he said, should immediately secure the deed from the registrar and construct a high brick wall around the property. Prabhupada's secretary wired mistress, who was away from Vrindavan. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada now in Vrindavan until the 13th, now settle our front piece as promised. Means, okay, come, let's settle up front piece as promised. Mistress wired his reply, front part of land will be used for other purposes as decided earlier. Letter follows. Suddenly it seemed that Prabhupada had another Bombay case on his hands. It means another Bombay case, means again issue, like the way Bombay had disagreement. However, in Bombay, he had purchased, here this man has donated. Prabhupada made all these plans, it cannot work out also, and people cannot do that. Mr. S, yes, yeah. Mr. S action, however, confirmed Prabhupada's urgency for completing the construction. Had the land been already walled and the temple built, there should have been no question of Mr. S taking the land back. Prabhupada's followers could now see clearly his reasons for pushing them. He had been vigilant, even heavy and critical, but for good reasons. Maya's opposition to Krishna consciousness was always present, so that if the devotees let up for even a moment, they could suffer great losses. The question, why hurry? Why be so anxious to build the temple right away? Should never have been asked. It was the question of the name, the lazy. As long as the Krishna conscious movement had no temple in Vrindavan, the threat would exist that there might never be a temple. Prabhupada wrote to a friend in Calcutta, the statement of K has given me much concern. He said personally to me that under dictation of Srimati Radharani, he has given the land to us in charity. We have invested already lakhs of rupees for constructing a temple. And now, if he uses the front portion of other purposes, there will be great damage to the view of the temple. Kindly see Mr. N.S. brother of K and settle this up so we can go in our progressive construction work. Kindly treat this as very urgent. So Prabhupada knew, when the opportunity is, Krishna is providing the opportunity. He has struggled for years and years, and Krishna is giving this facility. And for whom? For the people, for us. And when he sees that we don't understand the urgency of it. Why urgent? Why not we slow? What is there? We can do it. And Prabhupada sees that now situation has come. He's saying that if we would have done our work there's no way he would have asked it. And seeing that, feeling that similar situation may come, just like Mr. N from Bombay. So he said, it was the question of knave, the lazy. As long as the Krishna conscious movement had no temple in Vrindavan, the threat would exist that there might never be a temple. So he writes to a friend in Calcutta. I don't know why he writes it, but this is the situation he writes, that we have invested all this money to build. Now he's asking the land back. What should be done? Okay, Ajay, please go ahead.
Asia is only listening today.
He's listening, then you should read then.
Okay. In Mr. S.'s absence from Vrindavana, Prabhupada took the opportunity to speak with Mr. S.'s brothers as well as with Mr. S.'s lawyers. What had been given in the name of Srimati Radharani, he informed them, could not be taken back. Mr. S.'s associates agreed, at least for the moment, that Mr. S had no substantial position. Meanwhile, the laborers were working quickly to build a 12-foot high wall around the property. It was 4 a.m. Prabhupada sat in the cold darkness with a small dusk lamp shining before him. Having risen from the bed at 2 and come into his main room to dictate Srimad Bhagavatam purports, he now sat silently. He wore a wool knit hat pulled over his ears, a sweater, and a grey wool chadara around his shoulders. On the other side of the double door sat his servant, peeking in to see what his spiritual master was doing. On Prabhupada's last visit to United States, he had acquired a new secretary servant, Swarupa Dasa Goswami. Despite the cold, Prabhupada's new assistant was happy to be in Vrindavana and so intimately situated close to his spiritual master. Prabhupada rang his bell. The servant jumped up, opened the double doors, and entered the room. In the far corner of the large room, seated at the desk, he saw Prabhupada, looking grave and mystical, his beautiful, intense eyes sparkling. As Satsvarupa offered obeisances, he thought of his great fortune in being there with his spiritual master. When he sat up, he saw Prabhupada nod slightly, and he felt that Prabhupada was acknowledging his servant's good fortune. Sitting on the floor on the other side of the desk, Satsvarupa faced Srila Prabhupada. In awe and reverence, he tensed, prepared to do whatever Prabhupada requested, yet fearful that the request might be something he wouldn't know how to do. Get the Krishna book, volume 2, Prabhupada said. His servant ran and got it from the shelf, returned and again sat down. Read the story of King Durga, Prabhupada said. Though tense, Prabhupada's commands were complete. His servant paused, wondering if there was anything else. He opened the book, then hesitated. Out loud, he asked. Prabhupada nodded, and his servant began to read aloud. Prabhupada, as Mr. S was not there in Vrindavana, Prabhupada had the opportunity to speak with the brothers of Mr. S and also with his lawyers. And he explained them that the land was given in the name of Srimati Radharani and they should not ask the land back. And they all agreed. So he found that Mr. S don't have any good position because even the family members and the lawyers also agreed. And the laborers were building the wall, 12-foot wall around the property very quickly. One day, Prabhupada sat at 4 a.m. at his desk. He actually got up at 2 and he started dictating Srimad Bhagavatam purports. And now he was silently sitting in that in the cold weather in the wearing the sweater and the wool and chadra. So he rang, the servant was sitting outside. He is a new servant, Swarupa Dasa Goswami. He felt very happy, even though it is cold over there. He was very happy to serve his spiritual master, and he was looking at his spiritual master, what he was doing. And then Prabhupada rang the bell. He immediately came inside, offered obeisances, and asked what he can do. And Prabhupada asked him to get the Krishna book and open volume 1 and start reading King Mriga, about the King Mriga. And then he opened the book and he asked if he should read aloud, and Prabhupada nodded.
I'm wondering, he had acquired a new secretary servant, Sasudas Goswami. Sasur Sai Maharaj, who was running the Boston temple, right? And maybe he called him for as a personal secretary, it means. He's not new devotee. Yeah, Sasur Sai Maharaj is like very, very scholar. And okay, second to. Oh, I think you still have to say, right? Prasanti, more?
That's I finished, Prabhuji.
I think it is from read the story, right? Prasanti?
After that paragraph.
Okay. Soon, however, Satswarupa became puzzled as to why Prabhupada was having him to do this so early in the morning when he was usually dictating Srimad Bhagavatam. As Satswarupa read aloud, Prabhupada sat motionless, giving no indication that he was pleased or even listening. In that silence, Satswarupa became very aware of his own voice reading, and he listened intently to the story. Prabhu, if you can come down. King Nriga, the story explained, gave many cows in charity to the Brahmanas. One day, however, one cow wandered back and entered among King Nriga's herd, and so the king unknowingly gave it in charity to another Brahmana. But as the new owner was leading the cow away, the former owner returned to claim it. An argument ensued between the two Brahmanas. Coming before the king Nriga, they charged that he had taken back a cow previously given in charity. A great sin. The puzzled, little bit up, I did not read that. Previous paragraph got cut a little bit. Yeah. The puzzled king Nriga very humbly offered each Brahmana 100,000 cows in exchange for this one cow. Neither accepted. However, since according to Manu's law, a Brahmana's property cannot be taken under any condition, even by the government. Consequently, both Brahmanas left in anger, and as a result, King Nriga had to take his next birth as a lizard. As Prabhupada's servant read on, he suddenly got the feeling that Prabhupada had asked him to read this story to expose the cheating of his own servant. In a panic, he tried to think of how he had committed the offense of stealing from his spiritual master. He couldn't think of anything wrong until he recalled having taken a pair of socks which had been given to Prabhupada as a gift. Prabhupada was always receiving gifts wherever he went, and it was his practice, after collecting socks and scarves and so on, to give them to his disciples. Prabhupada would use only a fraction of the things given to him. So because it was cold in Vrindavan, Satswarup, who had no socks, had taken one inexpensive looking pair that he was sure his spiritual master would never want to use. He had assumed that Prabhupada would not object, but now his cheating was indirectly exposed. After the story was completed, Prabhupada remained silent, as did his servant. Perhaps Prabhupada is sleeping, Satswarup thought, though he dared not to say anything or even move. They both sat motionless, Satswarup looking down at the book and sometimes up at Prabhupada waiting for an indication. 5 minutes passed. Finally, Prabhupada said, "Now take this chapter and type it up." His servant acknowledged the instruction and got up to leave, but still it wasn't clear. Why had he read the story and why type it? Prabhupada then spoke again. Now I want to dictate one letter. Satswarup had a notepad with him and he sat down and immediately began writing Prabhupada's words. The letter was to Mr. S, and Prabhupada referred to Mr. S' donation of the land and to his desire to take back the front 50 feet. He reminded Mr. S that according to the original agreement, he had given the entire land with the sanction of Srimati Radharani. How could he say that now he was taking it back? Mr. S should please reconsider what he was proposing. In this connection, Prabhupada was enclosing the story from Srimad Bhagavatam of King Nrika. Mr. Ed should read it and consider the implications. So, Satswarup Das Goswami Maharaj, he was the secretary of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada asked him to get the Krishna book, and he asked him to read King Naga's story. So Prabhupada was listening, he was motionless, and Satswarup was listening to his own voice, and he was reading and listening at the same time. The story is about King Nriga, where he gave many cows in charity to the Brahmanas. So one day, when he gave a charity to a Brahmana, one cow came back and entered the King Nriga's herd, and the king unknowingly gave it in charity to another Brahmana. So when the basically this caused an argument between the two Brahmanas to claim that particular cow. And King Nriga, he basically offered them like 100,000 cows in exchange for this one particular cow, but neither accepted. And it says here in the Manu's law, the Brahmana's property cannot be taken under any condition, even by the government. And both the Brahmanas were angry, and as a result, King Nriga had to take his birth as a lizard. And when Satswarup Das Goswami Maharaj was reading the story, he reflected back as to why Prabhupada was asking him to read the story. And he thought of how he committed the offense of stealing from his spiritual master. Like Prabhupada usually gets scarves and socks as gifts, and sometimes he gives it to his devotees as gifts. So because it was cold, Satswarupa did not have any socks, and he took one inexpensive pair, which was Prabhupada's, and he thought that he would never use it, and he felt that this story was exposing the cheating that he did. And after the story was completed, Prabhupada asked him to type this particular chapter, and also he said, I will dictate one letter. And here he writes a letter to Mrs. S that when you offered this land in donation, it was the whole land, and you did that based upon the sanction of Srimati Radharani. Now, how could you take the 50 feet back? And he requests him that he should reconsider what he was doing. And he's also enclosing the story from Srimad Bhagavatam of King Nriga. And so this was about the letter to Mr. S.
Nriga has given 100,000 cows. Can you believe? And then he become legend. How dangerous it is. How dangerous it is. Karma kandi is very dangerous. And especially in devotional service also, we have to be careful. Brothers, please read.
Prabhupada's servant felt relieved, but he also felt that his guilt was valid, and that he should be wary of becoming too familiar with his spiritual master's possessions. And he had learned another lesson as well. His own viewpoint of Prabhupada was entirely subjective. Although he had been with Prabhupada, he had not correctly understood Prabhupada's thoughts and motives. He felt that perhaps he was not the only disciple who sometimes made that mistake. One may try to comprehend the many aspects of Srila Prabhupada, but one should not expect to understand completely. Even GBC secretaries and other leading devotees who were right with Prabhupada in his dealings could not know what Prabhupada was thinking. Satsvarup Maharaj decided that it was best to always follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And going back to the adjoining room, he began typing the story of King Nriga. At sunrise, Prabhupada stepped out of his house onto the dusty lane. The devotees of ISKCON Vrindavan joined him on his morning walk. As he walked, he began saying that one of the devotees who have complained that the electricity was always going off, the devotee had said that India was advanced in spiritual knowledge and the West is material knowledge, the West in material knowledge, and that the two should combine. Prabhupada agreed. Yes, he said, that is my mission, to combine them. Prabhupada reached the Chatikara road in front of the property and began walking down the middle of the road in the direction of Delhi. Large neem trees lined the road. The material side of life is also necessary, Prabhupada continued. In the West, even for shaving, they have a machine. This is very good, but it is also being misused. It is all for the itching sensation, sex, which is insignificant and abominable. The whole intelligence is being employed like the dogs or cats. Prabhupada paused and a devotee asked, Prabhupada, how can we understand that Vrindavan is Krishna's abode? There seems to be so much contamination in Vrindavan. This is because your senses are impure, said Prabhupada. But when your eyes are smeared with the salve of love, then you can see Vrindavan. Don't judge Vrindavan by his external manifestation. So here we see that disciples of Prabhupada are bewildered and they are trying to understand. And it is said that Prabhupada's point of view was entirely subjective. So it was said that, rather to try to understand Prabhupada, just follow Srila Prabhupada. And even the GBC secretaries and other living devotees who were right with Prabhupada in his dealings could not know what Prabhupada was thinking. And then later on, Prabhupada is going for a morning walk with ISKCON Vrindavan, and he's walking. And the devotees had said that India was advanced in spiritual knowledge and the West in material. Prabhupada said yes. And to combine both of them, that is the mission. And then Prabhupada started walking towards the Chatikara road, which is the junction from where if you take a turn straight in, that main road leads to the Prabhupada gate. So Chatikara road in front of the property and began walking down the middle of the road in direction of Delhi. Large neem trees lined the road. There were many neem trees. The material side of the life is also necessary. All of a sudden, Prabhupada popped out this statement. The material side of life is also necessary. Then he gives an example of shaving razor, electric shaver. But Prabhupada says that people are using it for indulging in abominable activities, just like dogs and cats. So a devotee asked a question to Prabhupada, that Prabhupada, how can we see Vrindavan? Vrindavan seems to be same as other places of villages. So what is the difference in Vrindavan? Prabhupada says, you are not able to understand because your senses are impure. When your eyes are smeared with love of God, then you can see Vrindavan. Don't judge Vrindavan by this external manifestation. Prabhupada is very straightforward, and where his vision is very clear. How to understand Vrindavan is through seeing through the vision of the Acharyas. Thank you.
Nipa.
The tightly gathered group walking in the cold morning air past fields, ashramas, and groves. They heard the singing of many varieties of birds parrots, parrots, cuckoos, pigeons, and peacocks. Sugarcane stood high and ready for harvest. As Prabhupada walked farther, the large neem trees gave way to small thorny acacia trees, and herds of cows and buffalo grazed in the fields. For half an hour, Prabhupada continued. Then, turning, he retracted his route. On the roadside he passed a man dressed in the simple white cloth of Babaji, warming himself before a fire of twigs. Prabhupada said that the Sad Goswami Astakam by Srinivasa Acharya defines the actual qualities of a person in the renounced order. The song glorifies the six Goswamis who gave up their post as government ministers and became mendicants, accepting only one cloth and thinking always of Krishna and the gopis. Vrindavana is the gift of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, Prabhupada said. They wrote many books so poor people could take advantage and become Krishna conscious. We see many imitations of Rupa Goswami in Vrindavana today, but they should never take the dress of Rupa Goswami, especially if they cannot give up the cigarette smoking habit. It was the gift of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati that we should not jump and try to change our garb all of a sudden. We should try to hear the absolute truth from realized souls. Prabhupada said that especially his disciples living in Vrindavana should become Goswamis, whether Grahasthas or sannyasis. They should live simply and austerely and engage 24 hours in the service of Krishna. Prabhupada sat in his room talking with Gunnar Nava about finances. Where are the bills? Prabhupada asked. I'm keeping the duplicates, Prabhupada. Gunarva explained, showing him how he had attached the bills to the vouchers. Tejas is keeping the originals in Delhi. This is just an explanation, Prabhupada replied. I am an auditor. I am not AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Don't you understand? The auditor wants to see the bills, not just your excuses. Throughout the day, Prabhupada would call in Gurudasa, Surabhi, Mr. Lahadi, the engineer, even the contractor, Mr. Ali Bux. Although the contractor was Mohammedan, Prabhupada requested him, please do a nice job because this is Krishna's temples. If you work very nicely, Krishna will bless you. Prabhupada assured him that money would not be a problem. He would arrange that $10,000 a month would come from his temples in America until the construction was finished. So, as Prabhupada passed the fields gathered for the tightly gathered no on the roadside he where was that? The tightly gathered group walking in the cold morning air. Past the fields, ashramas, and groves, they heard singing many varieties of birds like cuckoos, pigeons, and peacocks. Sugarcane fields were there, and they were ready to harvest. And Prabhupada walked farther the neem trees and gave small thorny acacia trees, and herds of cows were described, and buffalo grazed in the fields. For half an hour, Prabhupada continued, and he retraced his route then. And on the roadside, there was a man dressed in simple white cloth of Babaji, warming himself before a wire of twigs. And Prabhupada said, uh, Sad Goswami Astakam by Srinivasa Acharya, which defines the actual qualities of person, and in a renounced order. And the song actually glorifies six Goswamis as in their post of government ministers and who became mendicants, accepting one cloth and thinking always of Krishna and the gopis. And then Prabhupada said Vrindavana is a gift of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. They wrote many books so that poor people could take advantage of it and become Krishna conscious. And we see imitations nowadays of Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan, but they should never dress like Rupa Goswami, especially if they do not give up the habit of smoking cigarette. It was a gift by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and they should not jump and try to change all of a sudden. You should try to hear the absolute truth from the realized source. This is what Prabhupada explained, that especially his disciples living in Vrindavana should become Goswamis. Whether they are grahasthas or sannyasis, they should live simply and engage 24 hours in the service of Krishna. Then Prabhupada was sitting in the room talking with Gun Narv about finances, and he asked about where are the bills. And he replied saying that I'm keeping the duplicates. And she showed the attached like bills to him with the vouchers. And he said Tejas is keeping the originals in Delhi. And Prabhupada replied, this is just an explanation. He is not an auditor, neither is he A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Don't you understand? The auditor is actually looking for the bills, not just for the excuses. And throughout the day, Prabhupada called in Gurudasa, Surabhi, Lahadi, and contractor and Alibugs. So, like, the contractor was Mohammedan, and Prabhupada requested him to do a nice job so he can be blessed by Krishna. And don't worry about the money, money can be arranged from the temples in America till the construction is finished.
Yeah. It will be finished by Janmashtami. Prabhupada asked. Gurudas said firmly, it'll be done. Hope it'll be done. Last time I couldn't do it. Yeah, Pranath Prabhu.
While Mayapur, March 1974. While traveling from Calcutta to Mayapur, Prabhupada stopped as usual at the pleasant, secluded mango grove and, sitting on a straw mat, took a breakfast of fresh fruits. A group of his disciples and his sister Bhavatarini were also present, and Prabhupada saw that everyone received prasadam. He then returned to his car and the caravan continued to Mayapur. As Prabhupada's car approached the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, he was met by a roadblock of ISKCON devotees waiting at the spot known as Srivasangana, over 2 miles from the ISKCON property. 400 devotees from America, England, Europe, South America, Australia, India, and other parts of the world sang Hare Krishna, following Prabhupada as he rode slowly toward the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. Prabhupada smiled, looking out from the back seat of the car. He recognized many faithful disciples, all hankering for his merciful glance of recognition. The car, surrounded tightly by devotees, inched its way through the gates and up the long drive to the temple. Along the roadside and around the temple buildings, colorful marigolds and tagar were abloom, enhancing Srila Prabhupada's joyous reception. The temple room was completed, its sparkling marble floor, freshly painted walls, and crystal chandeliers all having been readied just a few days before. After offering obeisances before the resplendent golden forms of Radha Madhav on the altar, Prabhupada turned and walked the long temple hall to sit on his Vyasasan and address this first truly international gathering of disciples. He welcomed them to Mayapur, acknowledging that on this day, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prediction had come true. The devotees shouted triumphantly, Jaya, Jaya, Srila Prabhupada. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had written, oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German, and American people will take up banners, mridangas, and kartalas and raise kirtana through their streets and towns. When will that day come? So Prabhupada was traveling from Calcutta to Mayapur, March of 1974. Stopped and had some breakfast along with a group of his disciples and his sister Bhavatarini, and Prabhupada made sure everybody had received prasadam, and they continued to Mayapur. And as they approached the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, was a 400 devotees from all over the globe gathered there, and at a spot called Srivasangana, which was 2 miles from the property. and Prabhupada rode slow. The caravan went very slowly towards the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, and Prabhupada, was smiling, looking out from the back seat of the car. He recognized many of the disciples who were, hankering for his very merciful glance. And so finally it reached the gate, and from there was a long drive to the temple, and nice flowers were blooming. It was a really very joyous reception for Srila Prabhupada, and the temple room was completed. The nice marble floor, walls were painted, nice chandeliers, just few days before Prabhupada's arrival. And Radha Madhav deities were there on the altar, and Prabhupada offered obeisances, walked towards the temple hall to take seat on the Vyasasana and address this international gathering of disciples, welcome them to Mayapur, and acknowledging that Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prediction had come true. Devotees were really very joyously, celebrating, and by shouting Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur had written that that when will that day come when all the fortunate English, French, Russian, and German, American people will take up, these banners, mridangas, kartals, and perform kirtan through the streets and towns. When will that day come? And and he also had predicted that soon a great.
You haven't read it.
Whoops. Thank you.
Anyway, thank you so much. It's the first time 400 people, and it's a big gathering for that time, actually, 1974. And it is a March, right?
Yes, March 1974.
So Gaur Purnima. So first gathering of international devotees in Gaur Purnima is 1974. Looks like Mayapur project is moving fast. And whatever they build the temple, it's ready. Unbelievable. In just, in I think 2 years, no, 3 years probably by now. I forgot, it's 70 or 71 they got it. Now here the Radha Madhav deities is the brass deities is mentioned. So the big deities will not come that time. Okay. Who is Srikar?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prophecy had come to pass. He had also predicted soon a great saint will come and establish Lord Chaitanya's movement throughout the world. That great personality, empowered to create devotees of all races and backgrounds and to rally them together in Mayapur, thousands of miles from their homes, was Srila Prabhupada. And although he saw himself as an instrument of the Acharyas, his disciples saw him as a personification of Lord Chaitanya's and Lord Nityananda's mercy. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Yadyapi Amara Guru Chaitanyera Dasa Tathipa Janiye Ami Tanhare Prakasha. Although I know that my spiritual master is a servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. Leaving the temple room, Prabhupada went upstairs and retired to his room, satisfied that the building was now fulfilling its purpose by giving shelter to hundreds of his spiritual children. He began greeting leading disciples from various parts of the world, hearing the encouraging news of book distribution and dealing with problems. He asked that everyone take advantage of the holy dham by maintaining kirtan in the temple room around the clock, stopping only for a scheduled classes on Srimad Bhagavatam. The devotees were very happy to be together in the dham. Those with experience of India, like Jayapataka Swami and Achyutananda Swami, led groups of devotees on parikrama to local holy places. This visit to Mayapur would constitute the first half of the devotees' Indian pilgrimage. After 10 days, they were scheduled to go to Vrindavan. Almost all of the devotees assembled in Mayapur preached in areas of the world where the modes of ignorance and passion predominated. Daily, they had to mix with materialistic people, and it was inevitable that they would become worn down. This pilgrimage, therefore, was a chance for purification. Although they were not advanced in birth or in knowledge of the Sanskrit Vedas, Prabhupada had accepted them, and that was their certification as devotees. They were bona fide candidates for understanding the meaning of the Dham. They would become refreshed by bathing in the Ganges in Mayapur and the Yamuna in Vrindavan, and they would return to their respective centers throughout the world, purified and renewed for more active preaching. One song by Narottam Das Thakur described the pilgrims' eligibility to realize the Dham. Gaurangera Sangi Gane Nitya Siddha Karimane Se Yaya Vrajendra Sutapasa Shri Gauda Mandala Bhumi Yabajane Chintamani Tarahai Vrajabhume Vasa. So here Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prophecy has come true. As he predicted that soon a very great saint would come who would establish Lord Chaitanya's movement throughout the world. And so that great personality, who was the empowered devotee, I mean, he was able to create devotees from all backgrounds, all races, and then he invited everybody to Mayapur, and then that was Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada saw himself as an instrument of all the acharyas and his disciples, but all his disciples saw him as a personification of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda's mercy. So it is also stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita that although the spiritual master is a servitor of Sri Chaitanya, he is also a plenary manifestation of the Lord. So after the class, Srila Prabhupada left the temple room and he went upstairs. And then he was very satisfied that the temple building was now fulfilling all its purpose by giving shelter to thousands of his disciples. And then in his room, he began greeting all the leading disciples from various parts of the world. He was hearing from them all the encouraging news about the book distribution and all about the preaching activities going on everywhere. And then also he would deal with problems and give some solutions. And then he requested everybody to take advantage of the holy dham. And then he requested everyone to maintain kirtan in the temple round the clock and only stop when there is any scheduled Srimad Bhagavatam class. So the devotees were very happy to be together in the dham. So there were some devotees who had some experience of India, like Jayapataka Swami Maharaj and Achyutananda Swami Maharaj. So they would lead all these group of devotees on parikrama, on pilgrimage to all the holy places in Navadvip. And then so the visit to Mayapur is the first half. I mean, and then the second half of the Indian pilgrimage was scheduled to go to Vrindavan. So all the devotees who assembled, all these 400 devotees who assembled in Mayapur, they preached in various parts of the world, especially in all those areas where the mode of ignorance and passion is very predominant. So during their daily activities of preaching, they had to mix with many materialistic peoples, and then it's obvious that end of the day that they would become very very tired. And then therefore this pilgrimage, I mean, spiritually also very tired. So this pilgrimage was a chance for them to purify and then gain some spiritual strength. So although they were not very advanced by birth, Srila Prabhupada gave them the qualification. He accepted them as his disciples, so that was their certification as devotees. So because of Srila Prabhupada's mercy, they were all now bona fide candidates to understand the meaning of Dham. So through this experience of Dham, they would all get refreshed. It's like bathing in the Ganges of Mayapur or the Yamuna in Vrindavan, and they would all return to their respective centers around the world, purified, renewed for more active preaching. And then here there is a mention of one song by Narottam Das Thakur, which describes the pilgrim's eligibility to realize Dham.
Gaurangera Sangi Gane Nitya Siddha Parimane Seyaya Brajendra Sutapa Sri Gauda Mandala Bhumi Yeva Jane Chintamani Tara Braja Bhumeva. Sridhari will read that translation.
Those whose intelligence has come to understand that the eternal associates of Vrindavan Dhama are non-different from those in Navadvipa can attain the service of the son of Nanda Maharaja, Krishna. Such fortunate persons perceive the holy Dham as an object of service because their transcendental eyes have been opened by the mercy of the eternal perfect associates of Navadvipa Dhama. Therefore, those who are enthusiastic realize the touchstone of the holy Dham of Navadvipa through their transcendental eyes. Thereafter, they reside in the holy Dham of Navadvip, which they know to be non different than Vrindavana, and serve in their eternally perfected spiritual bodies. The devotee's main reason for coming to Mayapur, however, was to associate with Srila Prabhupada. He was always traveling, and his disciples could only expect to see him briefly from time to time as he passed through their area. To see him in Mayapur and Vrindavana, where they could be with him daily on walks and in the temple, was the most ecstatic part of the festival. Prabhupada's happiness to be in Mayapur was increased many times by the large gathering of his international family. He wanted this. Mayapur was for the devotees. Prabhupada even thought that, if possible, all the devotees should stay here permanently and simply go on chanting, although he admitted that it was not practical in terms of world preaching. He derived great satisfaction from sitting in his room above the temple hall and hearing the constant rousing kirtanas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said, he remarked, there is nothing of value in all the 14 worlds except the chanting of the holy names. Prabhu, can you please summarize?
Oh, I thought you were going to do that's okay. So, Gauranga Samgimani, he says the Lord Chaitanya's associates are Nitya Siddha, the eternal, the pure. Nitya Siddha means the perfected, eternally perfected beings. Do you all hear a noise from my laptop? I'm sorry for this. Anyway, those whose intelligence has come to understand that the eternal associates of Vrindavan Dham are non-different from those of Navadvip can attain the service of the son of Nanda Maharaj. Made sense? Those who understand the associates of in the Vrindavan Dham are non-different from the Navadvip Dham. In another place also it mentioned those who does not see any difference between the Vrindavan Dham and Navadvip Dham, they are eligible to enter into the spiritual world. So now here it said that here it is compared with even associates also. Those who understand those eternal associates of Vrindavan Dham are non-different from the Navadvip Dham, can attend the service of the Nanda Maharaj, Krishna. Both Dham, Gauda Braja Bhumi, Bhane Bhedana Dekhivo, Hoiva Barajavasi. So such fortunate persons perceive the holy Dham as an object of service because the transcendental eyes have been opened by the mercy of the eternal perfect associates of Navadvip Dham. Therefore, those who are enthusiastic realize the touchstone of holy Dham of Navadvip through their transcendental eyes. Therefore, they reside in the holy Dham of Navadvip, which they know to be different, non-different than the Vrindavan, and serve in their eternally perfected spiritual bodies. So that's the vision, that's the understanding, spiritual understanding that we have to come out, understand that we should not see the Mayapur Dham, which is non-different than the Braja Dham. And actually it's a long explanation, but it is a part of it. It is within Vrindavan. And one can see with the transcendental eyes only by the mercy of the spiritual master. When one sees that, he is eligible to enter the spiritual. He or she can serve. Now, devotee's main reason for coming to Mayapur is to associate with Prabhupada. He was always traveling, and his disciples could only expect, you all know, right? He goes there 1 week, 3 days, 2 days, everywhere. And he promises them, right? Okay, if you finish this, you make nice, I'll come and stay here with you. So now at least they're associating with Prabhupada directly, everybody. To see him, Mayapur and Vrindavan, where they could be with him daily on walks in the temple, was a most such ecstatic part of the festival. Both, it's a mutual, looks like it's a mutual happiness. Prabhupada is happy to see them, and they are very happy to see Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's happiness in Mayapur is increased because of seeing this international family gathering, because he know everyone, and everyone came here. Mayapur, Mayapur was for the devotees. Prabhupada even thought that if possible, all the devotees could stay permanently and simply go on chanting. Now it is his how much affection and love Prabhupada has for his disciples. We can see my devotees live happily. That's the whole purpose of thinking. How can I make? But at the same time, he's understand that how international society will run preaching work. So he derived a great satisfaction from sitting in his room above the temple hall and hearing the constant rousing kirtans. Bhaktivinoda, he says that Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, there is nothing of value in all the 14 worlds except the chanting and holy names. So maybe as winter is coming, we increase our Sankirtan more and more, even though it is indoor. We couldn't do much outdoor. Now is the time actually we can really should go out, do more and more. And but at least winter we should plan to have daily Sankirtan. I think you didn't read this right? I have a question though. How many, I know Brazil School has seen, how many of you have been to Mayapur? Anyone? I know you went. Okay, I think, please make sure in your itinerary or in your schedule, you have Mayapur and Vrindavan whenever you go into travel. It's a great, you all, many years you have been staying in association of devotees. So at least don't miss this next chance. Take opportunity to. Pranaku, you didn't go to Vrindavan?
Sorry, Prabhu, you're asking me?
Yeah, did you go to Vrindavan?
Yes, Prabhu. Sorry, I was on the phone with devotees. Okay.
Mayapur?
No, Mayapur, I haven't gone, Prabhu.
Yeah, this time.
Yes. Plan.
So, who is going to read? Next is Vijayanand Prabhu.
At Prabhupada's request, his governing body commission members had gathered in Mayapur. Their purpose was to discuss DISCOM's preaching activities around the world and then to pass resolutions to direct their preaching. This was the first time they had met as a body in Prabhupada's presence, and he instructed them how to conduct their meeting. They should not simply talk, he said. Rather, someone should present a proposal which should be then discussed and voted on. All resolutions should be listed in the minutes. Chalk out your plans for the year, Prabhupada said, and then whatever you decide, do not change it, but carry it out. Then next year, you can meet and discuss again. He was not in favor of prolonged meetings, but he was satisfied to see his TBC secretaries seriously confronting all items on the agenda for the sake of growing Krishna consciousness movement. One of the main features of the Mayapur festival was the arrival of advanced copies of the recently published volume of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The volume contained chapters 7 through 11 of the Adi Leela and included color instructions by Prabhupada's disciples. Chapter 9 especially glorified the Sankirtana movement begun by Lord Chaitanya and verse after verse ecstatically confirmed the authenticity of Srila Prabhupada's movement. Krishnadasa Kaviraja describes Navadvipa Dhamma as a place where Lord Chaitanya had planted the seed of the Krishna consciousness tree. In one verse, he states, thus the branches of the Chaitanya tree formed a cluster of society with great branches covering all the universe. And Srila Prabhupada had written a conclusive one-sentence purport to this verse. Our International Society for Krishna Consciousness is one of the branches of the Chaitanya tree. Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita translation and commentary was the fruit of the Chaitanya tree. It was fully authoritative and parampara, but never merely academic or technical. Its teachings stress that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire to widely distribute devotional service should be the desire of everyone. It left no doubt about what Prabhupada expected from the members of the Krishna consciousness movement. So here it explains about the first the governing body commission members meeting. They had gathered in Mayapur, and the purpose of that meet was to discuss on the preaching activities of the ISKCON around the world, as well as to pass resolutions to give directions for the preaching. And it was the first time the GBC members met in the presence of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada instructed them like how to conduct those kind of meetings. And he also mentioned that they should not simply talk, rather someone should present a proposal, and everyone should discuss on it, and should vote on a proposal, and all the resolutions should be listed in the meeting minutes kind of. And Prabhupada also mentioned like they should chalk out the plans for the year, and whatever they decide, they should not change it for 1 year. They should carry it, and next year they can meet, and if they want, they can change and discuss it again. And Prabhupada also did not like the longer meetings. He was satisfied to see his GBC secretary seriously confronting for the growth of the Krishna consciousness movement. And one of the main features of the Mayapur festival was the arrival of the advanced copy of the recently published volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita. This volume contained like chapters 7 to 11 of the Adi Leela, and it also had the color illustration of Prabhupada's disciples. And also, especially chapter 9, it glorified the Sankirtana movement begun by Lord Chaitanya, and verse by verse, it confirmed the authenticity of Srila Prabhupada's movement. Here, Krishnadas Kaviraja describes Navadip Dham as the place where Lord Chaitanya had planted the seed of the Krishna conscious tree. And also in one of the verses, he mentioned that the branches of the Chaitanya tree formed as a cluster of society, and with great branches covering all the universe. So for this, Srila Prabhupada written in conclusive one sentence purport to this verse, mentioning that that one branch of the Chaitanya tree is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness Movement. Also, Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita translation and the commentary was the fruit of the Chaitanya tree. It was because it was fully authoritative and following the parampara, and it was not like merely academic or technical. And also, it stressed that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire was to distribute the devotional service. That should be the desire of everyone. And also, it left that. It left clearly what Prabhupada expected from the members of the Krishna consciousness movement.
Nice. If you all remember, when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was explaining about Chaitanya tree, anyone remember? So many branches. Can anyone name one of the branches? Primary branches?
Lord Nityananda.
Yes, very good. And
Advaita Acharya.
And it was said that hundreds of branches came. Now, that time itself, we shared that ISKCON is a tree, right? Branch. And that's here, it's repeated here. The Krishna conscious movement is one of the primary branch of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tree of devotion. Okay, I think, did everybody read here? Shyamla, you can read if you're. Yeah, you can read.
Krishnadas Kaviraj describes Prabhupada's Chaitanya. The only purpose of the preachers of the Sankirtana movement must be to go on preaching without restriction. That is the way in which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the Sankirtana movement to the world. This volume also contained one of the most important verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bharata Bhumite Haila Manusya Janma Yara Janma Sarthaka Kari karikara para upakara. One who has taken the birth as a human being in the land of India should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all people. In, in his purport to this verse, Prabhupada explained the special piety of the Indians who were always ready to take part in a Sankirtana festival. Unfortunately, the present leaders of India were leading the people away from God, away from discussing pious and sinful acts, and away from belief in a next life. The Indians had the special duty of educating the world in Vedic principles. If all Indians had taken to this path as advised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada wrote, India would have given a unique gift to the world, and thus India would have given glorified. Moreover, it was not only the duty of the Indians, but the duty of everyone to help the Krishna consciousness movement. One should know definitely that the best welfare activity for all of human society is to awaken man's God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada stayed with the disciples in Mayapur for a full week, lecturing daily and meeting with smaller groups for many hours. On the day of Gaur Purnima, he went down to the Ganges and took the sacred water on his head, while his men dove off the high bank and swam. The next day, he left for Vrindavan, where he would again meet his disciples and introduce them to the Dhamma.
So now, the only purpose of the preachers of the Sankirtan movement, must be to go on preaching without restriction. So without any, as I'm grateful to all our devotees here and to all of you, since the COVID has started, we have so much of restriction, but everybody engaged, reading, participating, classes, chanting, chapter day, studying, and book distribution. There are many more. I'm very grateful that and everybody who is doing and participating. So that's what Prabhupada said, Sankirtan movement must go on preaching without restriction. That is the way in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced Sankirtan movement to the world. I assume only one thing we are lacking is, we are lacking at this time is going out with chanting. I don't think we should hesitate, going out chanting. It'll give satisfaction to the Lord. It is going to satisfy to others. It is going to satisfy to us also. I think we must go with that, at least few devotees, 5 or 6. Chaitanya Charitamrita Volume 2 looks like Adi Lila. This volume also contained one of the most important verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bharata Bhamite Hoilo Manusya Janmajara Janma Sarthaka Kari Para Para Upakara. So it says, one has taken birth, it's again and again this instruction is to do good to others. But unfortunately, looks like, in India, not everybody will be able to understand philosophy. We can see that not many feel like reading. That's why Prabhupada has different plans. Sankirtan, at least they will like it. Ready to take part in the Sankirtan festival. But unfortunately, leaders in India leading people away from their God, like a communist mentality, away from distinguish, everything is pious and impious, sinful activity. They all say there's no discrimination. Away from belief in the next life, reincarnation. Everybody, when someone dies, immediately the message comes, RIP. Can you believe? Indians born in India, they say RIP, rest in peace. Does not make sense. That's a very, very educated people, they wish like this. So Indians had the special duty of educating the world in Vedic principles. If all Indian, now I was thinking, if all Indians had taken to this path as advised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada wrote, India would have given a unique gift to the world, and thus India would have been glorified. Moreover, it was not only the duty of the Indians, but the duty of everyone to help Krishna conscious movement. One should know definitely that the best welfare activity for all human society is to awaken man's God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada stayed with his disciples in Mayapur for 1 week, and from that time onwards, 1974 onwards, the GVC meeting has started gathering. He met group in a small groups, big groups, because leaders GBC, first time the GBC meeting took place, looks like, in a large scale. Gorpund, he went to take bath in the Ganges, and other devotees also had a very wonderful time by jumping and swimming in the river on the Ganga. Then he left for Vrindavan, again meet his disciples to introduce them in the Dham. So that's a very great opportunity. I think for our personal benefit experience, this chapter is very good. Now, Prabhupada is giving us this opportunity to relish the Dham, associate with devotees. I wanted to ask all of you to share what you understood from this. Because our own satisfaction is also very important. Are we happy? Dham we must visit to the Dham. Pilgrimage has to be there. So I'm opening for reflections now.
I think it says here the Western devotees were always busy in their services in the Western world, like book distribution or preaching. And here they had the opportunity in the Dhams to associate with Prabhupada personally, because Prabhupada was there. They were going on morning walks, and this was also a purificatory process for them, which they were not able to do much in their Western world, because they were busy with their services or other activities, material association with
Who Prabhupada is referring to?
all of us.
Right. Is referring to us. So we should plan to go and break and nourish ourselves, recharge by spending some time in the Dham. Okay, very nice. Thank you. And what else?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prediction came true that all people all from all over the world will come to Mayapur and participate in the Sankirtana, and they also chant in the streets in the Kirtana.
Very nice.
And Prabhupada was happy about it, that all of them came, like 400 devotees came to Mayapur.
Yeah. And Prabhupada wanted all the devotees to stay here, yes, because that's their home. And we in Vrindavan is not different. And before time ends up, maybe we all should go. I know situation is different, but I think because we are congregating, some of the devotees are congregating in the temple, we should plan to go to New Vrindavan and spend in the holidays for a week or so together. If you all are interested, we can go and make a bus or drive our own cars, and we can. Haribol, you ready? So Brajas, who is going to arrange it? He's a good organizer. So you take all of us to the retreat now. It's your job to keep everyone happy now. It is our job to keep you happy in winter. Very nice. I'm looking forward for these wonderful moments, and please plan always to attend the Holy Dham. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.